What you see and feel out there, you put inside there, you carry it with you.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And first of all, my sincere apologies for the slight delay in this webinar. I'm with Nazim Lazari in the UK. I'm down under, and we just had a minor technical issue, but we're back, we're here. So thank you for your patience, and welcome to this webinar on how you can move to Australia. My name is Scott Mathieson, and I'm delighted to have you all on board listening to this, because there's probably never a better time to move to Australia, and I'm going to be able to tell you why with all of Nazim's assistance. So I want to get underway straight away and introduce you to Nazim, who, as I said, is in the UK. She's normally down under. Nazim, can you introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. My name's Nazim. I'm a registered migration agent, and I have been for 10 years. I've been with Working In for 11 years. So I originally studied law and was admitted to the bar in New South Wales. And so I've been helping thousands of people over the last 11 years of my time at Working In, making them move down under to Australia. I always try to encourage everyone to go to New South Wales because that's where I'm from.
Thank you. And my name is Scott Matheson, and we've been helping people like yourself move to Australia for over 20 years. I like to think of our team as big enough to be able to help you and small enough to care. So we have a number of consultants and employment support people specifically to help you on your journey down under. So really, the reason why I say that it's an interesting time to move to Australia is there's been a change of government, which Nazim will talk about, but also worldwide, what we're seeing now is a real clamber, if you like, for employers to find skilled people. And in all our time dealing with immigration, which, as I said, is now over 20 years, employment and jobs is the number one thing that drives immigration. So when a country needs skilled people, then it makes it slightly easier to migrate. And unemployment rate in Australia is the lowest that it's been in 50 years. And this is because of COVID. So I'll just explain very briefly that in March 2020, when the borders shut in Australia, a lot of people who were on temporary 4-year visas left, in the tens of thousands, and went back home to their countries, back to the UK, back to South America, back to Canada. And this started creating a skills shortage. And at the same time, because Australia's borders were firmly closed, no one was coming in. And normally, over 150,000 people will enter Australia each year, and those people never arrived. And so now we're coming out of COVID, and we've got these governments putting all this money to build the economy post-COVID. They need skilled workers to do that. And unfortunately, there are just not enough Australians to fulfill that criteria. So that means that the immigration policy is all set around jobs and whether you can add value to Australia by filling a gap in the skills shortage. So Nazim, we're going to be talking a little bit about the policy, but obviously there's been a change of government this weekend, major news. Can you just describe what impact that might have on Australia's immigration policy?
Yeah, so for those of you that follow Australian politics, you'll know that we've got a new Prime Minister, Albanese, and what this means is that there's always some trepidation with the new government as to what this will mean and, how that will affect immigration policy. Now, because of COVID and because of the fact that the borders were closed for 2 years, in the lead up to the election, the federal government was implementing and rolling out specific changes to make it easier for skilled migrants to be able to come to Australia. So that included people who had job offers or were working holiday visa holders who hadn't been able to use their visa. The government was very much about what can we do to get as many people into the country to help with the, getting everything back to business. So while the new government is taking power and moving into their roles, a lot of what's already been set will continue. And so that means is that for anyone that's looking to migrate, it's still a really, really good time to be doing so, because if you do have the right skills, there's employers looking to hire you and your skills, and they've got, you know, different visas and avenues in order to be able to do that. But also we've started to see that different state governments have announced, even just, I think it was yesterday, I got an update to say that Western Australia is, you know, reopening and allowing for more and more occupations to be sponsored from offshore for subclass 190 migration. So what you can see is that although there's a change, the need for skills is still there and the pathways are still there, and the opportunity is now.
Yeah, really interesting. Now, you did mention the subclass 190. I'm going to sort of get down and ask you, Nazim, as a MARA agent, a little bit of detail about all these numbers and subclasses. But before I go into that, you know, you are a MARA agent, and I think we should really let everybody know what a registered MARA agent is and why it's important that whoever you utilize, that you should be using a MARA agent on this once-in-a-lifetime journey. I'm bringing the screen up here, Nazim, if you just want to talk to that.
Yeah, so a registered migration agent is someone like myself who is registered and has authority and permission from the Australian government or through the Office of the Omara in order to provide immigration advice specifically for Australia. So myself and all other registered migration agents will go through an application process. We need to prove that we have the skills and knowledge in order to provide advice. And then we need to renew our license annually. What this means is that for you as a migrant or as the consumer, you have a level of protection. So the way that we operate is bound by the code of conduct. So the way that we would interact with you, we need to make sure that, you know, we're only assisting you with applications that we can assist you with. We're not, you know, encouraging you to do something where you don't qualify. Any funds that we receive in advance of us doing any piece of work goes into a client fund, almost like a trust account, in the sense that we only earn it once a piece of work has been done. So if for whatever reason during the course of your journey or your migration journey, you decide you're no longer moving, I mean, it happens, you know, people have family issues, that tends to be the main reason that they choose not to migrate anymore. If we, you know, any money that's in the fund would then be refunded back to you. So it's a consumer protection to ensure that, you know, you're looked after. So for anyone that's looking to migrate to Australia, make sure that you check the details of whoever you engage. There's like on the Office of the Omara website, you can check the details and make sure that the person that you're engaging is currently registered and is able to legally assist you.
Yeah, and don't hand your money over to someone who isn't.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. Okay. And look, really briefly, Nazim, I think as well, you know, for everybody out there, one of the reasons why Nazim is an absolute pillar of a spokesperson around migration is because she is one herself. I'm going to bring up a little quick picture, if you can describe it, Nazim, from when you were a child. Sorry to embarrass you here.
No, that's it's a great photo. I'm small enough not to know anything about jet lag in this photo, but this photo was taken the day that my parents and I arrived in Australia from the US. So that's my father sitting in the white coat, and my mum holding the baby bag and some other stuff on the side. So my parents moved to Australia on the basis of my father being skilled. He had a master's in computer science in the late 70s, early 80s, which was a big deal. And so on that basis, we moved to Australia and settled in Sydney. And so I understand some of the process that can come with migrating, not because, you know, I lived it. I was a baby. I know the stories of, you know, how my parents describe it, and the way that they would explain it to friends and family. And I guess the main thing to take from all of that is that my parents made the choice to move to a country to ensure that, you know, we had better opportunities and, you know, and a better life, a better quality of life. So although I wasn't born in Australia, I am an Australian citizen. My brothers were born there. And because of my parents, I've had the opportunity to live in other countries on the basis of my Australian passport. And all of that's offered to you as an Australian. So being able to go to university, it's a huge continent that you're allowed to live and work anywhere along. So I think that, I'm quite happy that my parents made that choice when I was younger.
I think the point also, Nazim, is that here we are, a couple of decades, maybe 3 decades later, and the skills is still the number one reason for why Australia is wanting to attract migrants. So, as I said at the beginning, the Australian job market is at an all-time boom in terms of unemployment rates. There's opportunities in healthcare, mining, construction, engineering, HR, hospitality especially. So there are a lot of opportunities. There are people putting on the chat. Now we'll try and answer as many of these questions as we can. We are a person down from our UK office, so if we can't answer all your questions, we'll certainly answer them afterwards. Okay, so look, if we can just run really quickly through those visa options, because there's this 189 and there's the 190, but there's other categories. So can you just explain to us how you can actually get to Australia without a job? Because I think that would be the ideal, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so I think it's important for people to remember that if they're migrating to Australia on the basis of skills, there's 2 ways. One is based on a job offer and the other is without. Now, the great thing about being able to migrate without having that job offer first is that it gives you the ability and the flexibility to do more of the process earlier on. Now, we talk about the gold standard visa being the subclass 189. So this is a visa for somebody who has an occupation on the medium to long-term skills shortage list and who has sufficient points in order to be selected. So at the moment, there's a little bit of competition. You've got 2 years worth of build up, from people who are wanting to move and make Australia home. And so people have been doing things to get themselves more points because it's important to understand that in Australia, everybody's ranked and they keep selecting the people off the top. So the subclass 189 is an independent skilled visa pathway, permanent residency to Australia. If your occupation isn't on the MLTSSL, or you can't quite get enough points because maybe you're a little bit older, or you're unable to get maybe the highest score on your English language test, the next one down would be the subclass 190. Now, the subclass 190.
Can I just pause you there? Can I just pause you there? Sure. You mentioned age and English and MTSSL. What's the MTSSL?
So it stands for the Medium Long-Term Skills Shortage List. Mm-hmm. And so this is a list of occupations that the Australian government has identified as being in the highest need or shortage in the country. And so if you're on that list, so say, for example, you're a registered nurse, that means that you have the ability to apply for the most types of visa subclasses. The government knows that your skills are in demand, that are in demand everywhere, and so they want to make it easier for you to qualify in order to be able to move.
So therefore, you don't necessarily need to go and find a job before you apply for your visa.
Correct.
You can potentially gain residency without a job offer.
Exactly.
All other things being equal. And you did mention English, and you did also mention age. So what's the minimum English standard for that?
So in order to be eligible for permanent migration in Australia, you do need to have either a British passport, UK passport, Canadian passport, one of the Western countries, or you need to be able to score the equivalent of 6.5 across all 4 bands of the IELTS test or equivalent. So obviously being able to speak English is really, really important. In Australia, it's obviously the only language that we speak nationally, other than I think sign language. And so the government knows that those that have a great command of English settle faster, do better. And so because of that, you can get points for, English that's better than the average Joe. So you can get points for English by doing an additional test. For some people, you don't need to do a test to qualify, but you'll do the test because you want the extra points.
Okay. And so for those out there that are unaware, IELTS is the International English Language Testing test. And so and the band for Australia is 6.5 across all four, just reading and writing, comprehension, and something else I can't remember. Speaking, yeah, thank you. Quite important. Okay, so we've knocked those two things off, and then the age, Nazim, it's such an important factor because Australia's settings are set quite low, and with COVID and all the delays, a lot of people we're talking to are getting very close to that age limit.
Yeah, so for general skilled migration, you need to be under the age of 45 when you make your application for permanent residency. Now, there are exceptions to that, but that wouldn't be under the subclass 189. It would be under one of the different subclasses. So every now and then people come to us and say, oh, look, I'm actually almost going to be 45 or I'm over 45. And we can look to see what other options those people might have. So not every occupation is eligible, but there are ways for some people to qualify still.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think the next thing. So we've got this 189, which is the amazing, all-encompassing Australia-wide visa category, which everybody essentially wants. And by the way, if you want to see whether you are eligible for this, I can see that our team are posting up a link, which is for a free eligibility assessment and a free appraisal. What Nazim's team will do is they'll look at that appraisal and give you some feedback as to whether we think, as a consultancy business, whether you actually do qualify for the 189 or the 190, which Nazim's going to discuss. And if you do, then we can take you to the next step, which we'll describe a little bit later. So it's a really good start. It doesn't cost you anything, and it gives you the opportunity to actually just see whether you do qualify. And if you don't under that category, there might be some other categories. So we can, and I guess we'll talk about that in a second. There's a lot of questions coming through that are very specific to specific people, and we'll try and deal with those a little bit later in the webinar. So please keep on writing, and we'll try and pull out some of those questions that relate to the wider issue, and we'll try and answer those. So, and I think the second visa class is the 190, which is similar to the 189, but very state related. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so the 189, as I described, was the independent visa. The 190 is a state-sponsored visa. And what this means is that you're effectively getting a state to sponsor your application and support it for permanent residency. Now, if your occupation isn't on the MLT SSL, it might be on the short-term skilled occupation list, or STOTL, however you want to pronounce it. So some occupations are on that list, but not on the MLT SSL. So if your occupation is on this other list, then you will require state sponsorship, but that's actually a good thing. Lots of people who, even if they do qualify under independent, will look for state sponsorship because it provides you with 5 additional points. And it means that you are priority processed because one of the states will effectively pluck out your application and push it to the front of the queue to get your permanent residency. So a lot of times people will go that route. At the moment, New South Wales and WA and also South Australia to some extent are selecting and inviting people to apply for permanent residency even when they're offshore. So you don't have to, during COVID, because the borders were closed, they were only, moving forward with the applications for people that were physically in Australia so that you wouldn't have to worry about quarantine and such. But now that that's sort of gone by the wayside, we're seeing a move towards more and more occupations being added to the lists and more confirmation that, everything's going back to normal, and, there'll be selecting people from July when the new migration program year begins.
Yeah, because someone has asked, when is the 190 New South Wales going to start being processed?
So if it's so New South Wales is also suggested that from the 1st of July, as part of the new migration program year. There are some occupations that were selected in the last round offshore, but not many.
Okay.
So yeah, it's all happening. What's really important is that people understand that it takes a long time to get to the point where states can be considering you. So if you haven't already, mapped out your journey and know that you qualify, if you haven't made your plan, you kind of don't need to be worried about what the states are doing quite yet, because you might be sort of 5 months away.
Yeah, look, and we're going to talk about the plan because it's all about the plan, isn't it, Nazeem?
Absolutely. You need to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, and I think that's what, we're here really to discuss more than anything, is that there's a lot of detail that goes in underneath the surface of immigration. But number one thing is that you need a goal and you need a plan, and then you need to sort of work through that plan steadily. And essentially what we'll do is hold your hand around that, because, as I said before, it's a once in a lifetime journey. And, if you do things out of order, you can be wasting a lot of time and a lot of money. And a lot of people do that. And oftentimes people come to us and they've already spent ridiculous amounts of money, or they've submitted something in the wrong order, or they've got a job offer and then they have to act on it, and then the employer gets bored waiting for them, and then they retract their job offer. So there's all sorts of things that happen, and that can completely be avoided. And really, unless you like stress, then we would recommend at least allowing us to help you with the initial part of the plan, so you've got a template that you can work to. So look, I think, Nazeem, let's just cover off that other aspect that I mentioned. I'm going to bring up the main visa streams, because we have talked about the 189, the 190, but then there's the skilled schemes, the 494 and the 491. So lots of numbers, guys, but this is where if you don't meet the criteria for the residency for 189, 190, without a job offer, you will need a job offer. You could get a job offer, and that may allow you to get into Australia. So do you want to explain that in a more eloquent way than what I just did?
So there is additional subclasses, and we've also got additional skills lists. And so depending on the occupation and what skill list you are, you might have options under these other subclasses as well. So the subclass 494, skilled employer regional visa, is exactly what it describes. Is you basically got a job offer from an employer in a regional area, and then you have your pathway to residence via that subclass, where it's a provisional visa. It's approved, and after 3 years, you can get your PR. And likewise, the skilled work regional is a provisional visa. Again, same kind of thing. You're committing to a regional part of Australia, and after a period of time, then it converts into permanent residency. Now, not all visa subclasses require a job offer. Some do, some don't. What's really important is that people, as part of your plan, you understand for your occupation whether you do or you don't need a job offer. Because if you do, then you know that you can start working towards it as your goal. If you don't need it, well, then you can focus on all the other things that need your attention first for you to be able to migrate. And I think that's why it's really, really important to have that plan. Because without that plan, you're going to go around in circles and you might not end up actually getting any closer to migrating to Australia.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that the job-led model or the job-led pathway is really interesting, especially for some people who are what I call, they're not slam dunk. They just don't meet all the very high bar that Australia has. But if you can get that all-important job, and maybe it's in a state that you weren't anticipating that you're wanting to move to, South Australia has a big migration scheme. Our recommendation is, if that's your only possibility of getting into Australia, then you you should jump at that because that gets you into Australia. And you don't have to stay there all your life, of course, but oftentimes people will move on that regional and move to a place like South Australia and suddenly realise, oh, they really love it, and they don't actually go back to Sydney or Perth where they originally thought that they were going to move. So, that's quite an interesting dynamic, isn't it, Nazim? So can you get residency off the back of those two visas? So you might have answered that question already.
Yeah, they lead to permanent residency.
Yeah. Someone's talking about the rail industry, Brian. Absolutely, we can help. We actually work with one of the largest mining companies in Australia who are looking for rail engineers. So yeah, reach out. And I suggest if anybody wants to actually sort of engage with us, and on a non-financial matter, just fill out the eligibility form. That's probably the easiest way, and then we will assess that. Now, after we do that, and I'll just explain a little bit how this works, because it's a two-step process. The first part is this free appraisal. It's the form that's been posted up there. We, as a business, we just want to give you, I guess, clarity right from the get-go. We want to say to you, look, you actually qualify or you don't, and if you don't, why not? So if you do qualify, the next thing that we'll be saying is spend a little bit of money and do a full, what we call as your visa path. So that is a complete rundown of everything about you, and then Nazim's team will look at that in detail and produce a report. And it's a very, very, very detailed report, giving you what we believe would be the ideal pathway into Australia, which means the fastest, the cheapest, and the most likely successful outcome. Nazim, how much does your visa path cost?
It's in Australian dollars. It's $399.
$399. So it's quite a lot of work involved here from the advisors to put that together and put that report together. And then as part of your report, you get an hour with Nazim or one of the other consultants to run through the report and really understand it. Now, so there's the free appraisal, number one, and then there's your visa path, which is the more detailed one, which is the $399 one, which you get an hour's consultation with. And look, and that, from our perspective, at that point, you know what your options are, and you can either continue to work with us or not. Obviously, we'd like to work with you and take you on that journey and guide you and help you and assist you. But really, after that first $399, that report is so comprehensive, you've got it in your hand. That's your map, I guess, or your pathway for Australia. Do you have anything to add to that, Nazim, being heavily involved in it on a daily basis?
I was going to say that, it really does give you the answers that you're after. A lot of times, we find that, people will say, oh, but what about this? And can I do that? And they've got a list of questions. And we're like, well, until we actually look at your circumstances and we go through the regulations and we double check and come back to you, once we've done all of that, we can tell you what that's going to look like, what the pathway is going to be, and what you can start doing now. I think, look, if you do it, so the point of that first free initial appraisal is for us to not waste your time or your money. So if it doesn't look like we can help you, we're going to tell you, look, we're really sorry. Look, it probably isn't going to be something that's easy. If you still want us to go through the process of trying to find a way, well, we'll find a way. It might not be what you like, but we'll find a way. But if we can help you, we'll let you know that we can help you, and then we'll give you that roadmap. And once you've got that, you can decide, well, do I proceed? Is this something that I actually want and that I'm going to do? I do want to move to Australia and I'm going to do it. Or, if it looks like it's not, something that you want to do, you can say, well, at least I know that I've tried. I had a look and it's not actually for me. That's fine. You can sort of put it to bed. But I think until you actually know, you're just going to be wondering forever and you'll just go around in circles.
So I guess the other thing is, Nazim, someone's mentioned about cost. What does it cost? I mean, how long is a piece of string? Obviously we charge fees. The Australian government charge,
Heavy
very
fees.
large, very, very large fees to this. And I guess our message is immigration to a place like Australia is once in a lifetime. There are costs involved, and that's unavoidable. Our role here is to minimize your risks and to maximize your opportunities, so that whatever the costs might be, not necessarily just through us, but through the entire process. Like, for example, we have partners that help you with your relocation, shipping partners, banking partners, pet removal partners, all these experts that we have that you might not have ever considered, who we've known for over 20 years, who are experts in their field, who will advise you honestly and help you save and do things correctly and tell you what you can do and what you can't do. So a big part of that is it just reduces all your time of being on the internet and trying to search up stuff and looking at chat groups. And we'll just say, look, talk to this person. They've done this for 25 years and look, they've got helped thousands of people, and they know exactly how to do this. And we're giving you that person as part of our package to talk to and to assist you. So I guess that's what it's all about. I wanted to point out, Brian is talking about, hey, look, I don't really know what category to apply under. Nazim, honestly, this is such a big issue, right? And it's just one example of how we assist. If you could just use that and talk about that.
Yeah, so by us undertaking that full Your Visa path, we can tell you exactly, we recommend this subclass based on your occupation and the information that you've provided. You might also have this one and this one as an option as well. But as Scott mentioned earlier, we're always going to be suggesting the one that's going to give you, the best outcome with the least conditions, and it's going to cost you less. So there's no point trying to suggest a pathway that's going to, take a lot longer and it's got more steps if we can avoid it. So by us doing that, we'll be able to tell you exactly, Brian, you need to do a subclass, I don't know, 190, and you need to look at WA, whatever it might be. Please don't take that as advice. I have no idea about your circumstances. I'm just sort of giving an example. So that's basically what you need to do, because otherwise you're never going to know and you're always going to wonder. And what you could do is the wrong thing. So a colleague of ours who has now been in the migration business for 20 odd years with us, he originally tried to do his own visa. He messed it up royally, spent, I think he jokes about paying tens of thousands of pounds. I don't know how much he actually spent, but it was not good, and he got a decline. And then he needed to engage the services of someone who knew what they were doing to actually get him the visa. So I think it's really important that you do seek proper advice.
Yeah. Okay. So just to summarize a little bit about what we've talked about here today, I know we started late, so I apologize for that, but it is 9:45 in the UK, so it's getting on. So we'll try and wrap this up. But COVID has created a very unique situation whereby the borders are going to be opening or are opening, and the demand for skilled people is as high as it's ever been in certainly our memory, which is over 20 years of assisting people move to Australia. So that means the opportunities to migrate are as good as they have ever been. There are two paths to moving to Australia, one without a job offer and one with a job offer. We can obviously assist you with both. But a starting point to put a stick in the sand, if you like, to start your process, to try and get this underway, to stop all the research and all the talking and all the browsing on the internet. A really good way to start is just get this free appraisal, see what the result is, and then the momentum will take over from there. And in an ideal world, you would do the full Your Visa path, which is $399. You get the full report, which is 10, 12 pages, gives you all the detail that you possibly need, great bedtime reading. And from there, you've got a pathway. You know exactly what you need to do in order to move to Australia. It couldn't be more clear. And then hopefully Nazim and her team can assist you with employment support and immigration advice to ensure that you can come down to Australia and enjoy this amazing, amazing country. So, Nazim, do you have anything else to say on this webinar? I know it's short and there's a lot of people with very specific questions. I wish I could answer them all, but just to wrap up.
Yeah, so I'll try to jump onto the chat after this to try to type in some answers.
Great, thank you.
But I think what's really, really important is that, look, I'm currently in the UK. I've been meeting with people here at the moment while I'm traveling. You know, everyone wants to go to Australia. Everyone's got really specific questions. And what's clear is that a lot of the people that I've been speaking to haven't started with the process. So they're still in that trying to find out information, but they haven't actually committed to a process for them and their families. You really need to do that. You need to take that first step and say, no, I'm committed. I'm going to do that appraisal. And if it comes back positive, I'm going to do that your visa path. And then I'm going to talk to someone about what that means and what my next steps are. Once you do that, you'll be able to move forward. You'll have the answers to the questions that you're posting, and you'll be able to actually take some, firm steps and actions towards your goal, which is to actually move. So I don't know how it was for my parents, but they did something. They started, and that's why I'm Australian.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, it's past 8:46 now, so I'm really aware that everyone's got their dinners to go to, or getting their children into bed, or whatever it might be in your evening time or afternoon time. So just thank you very much for watching this webinar. I hope it's been useful. Get started on that free appraisal. Can't hurt. And hopefully we can see you down under in the years, this year even, maybe. Okay. So thank you very much, and good evening, good afternoon.